Self-insistence is so very important, and so many people lack it, or don't, they feel embarrassed about insisting on themselves, like thinking of themselves, putting themselves first. And it's hard for me to understand, because when I think through it logically, the best thing for me is always going to be to have the best people possible around me. And so, if I'm just looking out for myself, if I'm just doing what's in my best interest, then that's always going to mean doing whatever it takes to have the best possible people surrounding me, for the sake of accomplishing whatever I'm trying to accomplish. So, if that just means something as simple as happiness in a romantic relationship, which is what it means for a lot of people, or having a family, then it's just whatever it takes to have the people I want to do that with be there is what is most necessary to taking care of myself. And I think there's a lot of people who reject themselves, who think that you can't do things for you, you have to do things for someone else because you're not worth it. But again, if you are taking care of yourself to the best of your ability, then you are helping other people. You might be selective about helping people who are going to benefit you in some way, but that is also the people who need you the most, or the people who you're going to have the most effectiveness with, So I understand why maybe for some, the person who you think needs you the most is just somebody who's already in your life, who you've sort of dedicated yourself to. That's great. For me, I basically made decisions about certain people where I'm I'm going to remain loyal to this person until the day that they don't want me to anymore, until the day that I am rejected as a person in this person's life, but I am never going to give up on the idea that I belong there. And so, I'm somebody who, I have lost lots of connections and relationships, and, because people decided that they, couldn't put up with me anymore. But never because I decided I couldn't put up with somebody else, which, maybe makes me, terrible. But, I've found myself with a group of people that wants me around, that I want to be around, and, that I can insist on myself, and that will be good for the group, because whatever benefits me benefits them, because they're not working towards something different from what I am. We're all working towards the same goal together. And again, me doing whatever is best for me is going to be what's best for everybody else. But if I don't do anything for myself, if I try to just rely on everyone else, that's where I'll slide into the role of just being kind of nothing. If I don't want anything, there's nothing for anyone to need to produce for me, if that makes sense. I'm getting a little bit abstract here, so let me give some more concrete examples of what I'm talking about. There was an anime series called Sangatsu no Lion that I'm a big fan of, and in that there's an arc where this girl's getting bullied in school, and she gets put into a program to rehabilitate her ability to communicate with other people her age. And the way that they do this is they start by having her become friends with animals, then move on to old people, and then move on to trying to associate with her peers. I was really fascinated by that idea because they don't really explain why that works in the show, but I've kind of learned it from being around animals and old people more recently. And it's that animals and old people are more likely to let you know what they need immediately, because they actually need help. They rely on people being there to do something for them. And so there's not the same level of, even if they did feel guilty about it, or if they didn't want to admit they needed help, they need it. They cannot make it without it. And a lot of us sort of teeter in this place of thinking well, I know that I'm capable of doing things by myself. I just hate it and don't want to do anything that way. And so you find yourself in this paradox of thinking that asking for anything is being over-reliant on other people when, you know, at the same time, everybody is in the mindset of like, well, I don't want to be doing any of this by myself. But it's just a question of like how much you're willing to give yourself over to, like, you know, the collective will to make something happen, as opposed to, you know, your own individual desire for things to go the way you want them to go, you know? So, like, that's where communication gets difficult. But if you aren't insistent on the way you want things to go, or allow, you know, or like gung-ho, I guess, about the way someone else wants things to go, you're just going to find yourself like in a miserable middle ground of like doing things you don't really want to do, but also never getting what you want because you're not talking about what you want, because you're not just like saying it out loud. And, you know, a dog will just come up to you and demand your attention. It will just not stop trying to get your attention until you give it to the dog. And I learned from being around 4 dogs that even though all 4 of them equally wanted attention, whichever one was the strongest and most insistent got the most attention. The you know, 1-year-old German Shepherd would push all the other dogs out of the way to get pets, and because of the fact that she reliably knew she could do that, the other smaller dogs eventually just kind of gave up, and they pushed themselves aside, and they stopped insisting on themselves and started waiting their turn, because they just didn't think they could compete with the one that was actually trying to get attention. Eventually it came to be that the dog that insisted on itself the most got the most love and affection, ended up being the most well-rounded, like, personality of the dogs. As I was observing, you know, the older ones or the weaker ones or the smaller ones just kind of not even trying to get the kind of attention because they just know they're not going to push that little, you know, obnoxious dog out of the way. And this trait is seen as lovable. You know, like, people responded better to that dog than the other ones, or at the very least it got more of what it wanted because of that self-insistence. And I guess what I'm trying to say basically is that if you really want people to meet your needs as a person, you need to act as desperate as a dog or as an old person does. You need to recognize that you will eventually be in a position of needing people to, you know, even be able to function on a day-to-day basis. And you might not imagine yourself ever even getting to that point. But if you, I mean, you're probably not going to deliberately stop yourself from getting to that point. You might accidentally die before then, but your life expectancy is such that you will eventually get old enough that someone has to take care of you. And, you know, you should just recognize that if you had people helping to take care of you way before then, if you already had insisted on yourself and insisted that people help you to achieve the things you're trying to accomplish, and those things were in fact worthwhile and you were able to make something of yourself, then you won't need as much help when you get further down the line, or you'll have the infrastructure to help you, rather. You know, I've met people who were successful in their youth but did not maintain any kind of infrastructure of human relationships to keep them buoyed into old age. And by the time they were older, they just don't have anyone really looking out for them or taking care of them, or they only have the bare minimum because they didn't build something that would sustain people to, you know, to the point of being able to give back in that way. That's how deep it goes. Like, if you're not insisting on yourself now, you're going to be begging for yourself later. So do it while you can actually accomplish something, and not when you're broken down, falling apart, and dying. And, you know, speaking as a 31-year-old, you know, I'm in decent shape, and even I'm in pain all the time. My body has started just giving out in certain ways. It's hard for me to do physical activity without hurting myself. And lately I've been having, like, headaches from just pressure just from like storm clouds coming in that feel like they're grabbing my brain. I thought I was going to have a fucking aneurysm and die this morning because of how much pressure was on my fucking skull. I'm saying all this from the perspective of somebody who's like, oh God, I have to get something done because I might die now, much less by the time I'm 80. But you need to be worried about getting something done before you wake up one day and realize you can't anymore. Anyways, I've been Trixie the Golden Witch, the world-renowned otaku and ranting, raving lunatic. I'll rant about anything you want if you give me at least $5 on Patreon. You're in the middle of Vlogust, the month of vlogs every single day for all of August, because, I want to talk to you guys more and have more of an open dialogue going on here on this channel about all the thoughts in my head and intriguing things that I think about life, such as how you need to insist on yourself more. And I insist you fucking pay me. Go to my patreon.com/goldenwitchfire and request a rant so I have something to talk about this month in my vlogs. Also, goldenwitch.substack.com. You get bonus articles, sometimes podcasts, which are usually released on Patreon also. I also have a Patreon reward tier now where if you give me like a whole lot of money, I put your name in the credits of all the major videos. Nobody's signed up yet. You could literally be the only name in the credits if you're fast. Everything else is in the every YouTube video featuring the Golden Witch playlist. And don't forget, you, forever,